What we're going to do today is do a brief overview of Quirkos and then really focus today on exporting the data and the various different formats that we can use to work with the coded data once we've gone through and done our analysis on it. Here I've got the project just as we left it off last time from the workshop. This again is the fictional example about people talking about what they have for breakfast. There's now a much more detailed example available if you go onto our workshops page, which will show you the transcripts from a project that we've done looking at the Scottish referendum in the UK. And that's a real source of data which has been fully transcribed, and you can download not just a completely coded project like this, but also the raw transcripts. You can go through and do some coding yourself. So that's a really good source if you want to do something a little bit more in depth. Generally, for a brief overview like this, it's easier to get going with a simpler thematic project. So we're going to keep going with the same breakfast example that we used before. Now, in this example, I think we've got about 5 or 6 different sources in here. We've got coding here, which we've done over the last couple of workshops. And you can also download these project files if you want to play with these. So you can go along and use these yourself, or you can also be using them after the session if you want to go through and try some of these things yourself. So all those packages are available to download from our workshops page. What we're going to do is a very brief overview. So if you haven't been here at the other workshops, basically with Quirkos, the interface is set out so that on the left you have your framework, all of your bubbles here, which are used to represent the different codes and source you can use to analyze your text. And then on the right are the different text sources. You can flip between them here by selecting any of these different sources in the source browser, which is here on the bottom left. And there are tabs you can use to jump through some of these as well. So what we're going to do is to show a little bit of coding. For example, if you're talking about something healthy, so here's someone talking about a health food shop, you can just select text like this, drag and drop it onto one of the bubbles. The bubbles grow, and you get this little highlight in the column here showing the color of the piece of text that you've added. Now, what we did last time is we looked at managing and grouping these quirks, and also about merging and duplication. So for that reason, we've got healthy and healthy 2 here. Now, if we want to remove one of these, we can group them by just drag and dropping them onto here. If we wanted to remove one of them, all we have to do is right click and then select remove quirk. Any of these actions, you can use the undo and redo button. So you can always go back if you change your mind. So we really do want to remove that quirk. And I think we're also going to remove this one here for grape juice. Now, the other thing that we can do is the source properties. So each of these sources in here represents one person's interview, which has been transcribed. But clicking on this button on the top right shows the source properties. And this is how we can change the name of the source and how we can also describe the source. So we've got categories across all the sources here for gender, age, city, and job. We can see Jane here actually doesn't have a job assigned to her at the moment. So using this drop-down button here, we can either select a new value or we can choose one of these other options. So just for speed's sake, we'll just say that she's a baker as well. We're just, by looking on the tab here, we can see Sarah, who she's already put down as a waitress and a cook. So if we wanted to add a new property, we can do it with this plus button here, or the properties and values editor here gives you a lot more choice about the different options that you have. So for example, if we wanted to remove one of the categories from gender or edit it in some way, easily. And we can also look at the other categories here and make some multiple choice, like the jobs at the moment is multiple choice. So that means that we can say that one person has more than one job. And we could say that one person is able to go to just live in more than one city just by clicking that way. We can also remove any values here from any of the properties just by clicking on this X button here. So that looks fine. The final thing here is a graph overview. So the properties overview here shows the layout of the all the different sources. What this is showing us here is that most of the sources we haven't categorized for male or gender, so only 28% of each of those has been assigned to be male or female. But it shows here in the graph that 100% of the ones that have been coded have been assigned these layout of gender. And same for the age. There seems to be many sources in here that we haven't described. So I think that's probably because I think some of these sources are blank. So we'll close the source properties here. Look at source 7 here. Yes, this is a blank one that we've added as an example. So what we can do here is scroll down to source 7 and just remove it there. Asks us to confirm that we want to do that. And I think probably the same for source 8 and source, okay, source 6, there's something in there, but let's remove source 8 as well. Okay, now if we go back to look at the properties view, okay, that's looking much better. There's still obviously a couple we've missed in there, but that's looking much more likely. Okay, so really the focus of today is looking at, to assume that we've done some coding, we've done some analysis of the data, described our source properties, and maybe explored the data a little bit. Well, how can we get this data out of Quirkos and into a report we might be writing, a presentation, or into some other kind of software? So we're going to go through some of the options for that, because there's quite a lot of different things that you can do. The first thing that I want to bear in mind, which quite a few people ask about, is how they can capture the source of the property, how they can capture a particular moment in their coding process. And the best way to do that is to use the save as function here. Now what this would do is let you save your project with a new name. So for example, it's now called coded example breakfast. Documents breakfast example. So there it is, coded example breakfast. We might call this coded example breakfast 2. And that way, any new changes that we make are going to happen to coded example breakfast, with our previous ones stored so that they don't get overwritten. So that way we've got a snapshot of the process at a particular stage.